The alien hunters moved through the fog-drenched forest with a swagger of creatures convinced of their own superiority, their guttural laughter echoing between the charred trunks like the taunts of victorious predators. They relished the hunt, every step asserting their belief that humans were nothing more than panicked animals scrambling in the shadows. Their boots crushed brittle branches, sending faint snaps to the cold morning air, but the forest, scarred, silent, and watchful, offered no answer except the eerie stillness of a battlefield that had seen too many hopeless fights. They were expecting fear. They were expecting flight. They had no idea someone was watching them with a patience sharpened by grief. That watcher was a lone human survivor who had once been nothing more than an ordinary person, until the invasion carved a different path for them. Loss had refined their instincts. Pain had forged discipline. Silence had become their closest companion. The forest that swallowed sound in its shadows had become their sanctuary and their weapon. Every tree, every ridge, every hollow had been mapped in their memory through months of surviving alone. While the aliens treated this ground as an amusement park for their cruelty, the humans saw it as sacred. One of the last places on Earth where resistance still drew breath. From a perch between two moss-covered branches, the survivor observed the alien squad with calm precision. Their breathing remained measured, slowed deliberately to sync with the faint rustling of leaves drifting on the wind. Their fingers rested lightly on the grip of a handcrafted spear. Nothing like the high-energy weaponry the aliens carried, but deadly in the hands of someone who lived by necessity rather than privilege. Each movement they made was born out of hunger, out of fear, out of the burning memory of the night when their home had been reduced to ash and their family taken away in chains. That night still haunted them, whispering reminders of everything stolen. The aliens, oblivious to the eyes tracking them, continued boasting among themselves, their armor clanking softly as they mockingly recounted past hunts. They enjoyed reliving the thrill of chasing down terrified villagers who had hidden in barns and shelters. Their arrogant confidence thickened the air like smoke. They believed Earth's resistance had already fractured, that survivors were scattered, untrained, and desperate. Each smug remark fueled the survivors' determination, tightening the knot of resolve in their chest. Rage no longer guided them. Purpose did. Revenge for its own sake had burned out long ago. Now only the mission remained. Protect the remnants of humanity by eliminating the monsters who believed themselves invincible. A branch snapped somewhere behind the hunting party, but they dismissed it instantly. The forest was full of noises, after all, and they had machines that could detect any heat signature larger than a rodent. Their overconfidence blinded them. They never wondered why their scanners remained suspiciously quiet. They never questioned why the air felt too still. They didn't know that the survivor had spent days learning the blind spots of their devices, using mud, moss, and cold water to mask heat and movement. Technology made the aliens strong, but also made them complacent, dependent on predictable readings rather than their own senses. As the squad approached the old ravine that cut across the forest floor, the survivor tensed, recognizing the significance of this moment. The ravine was narrow, choked with brambles, and dark even under daylight, an ideal place to disappear bodies without leaving traces. The survivor had used it once before when testing the limits of what they could do. Today, the ravine offered an opportunity. They shifted silently along the branches, following the alien's path parallel from above. Every movement was calculated, every breath fitting neatly between the alien's footsteps. Their minds sifted through options quickly. Strike now, strike later, or wait for a larger group. Logic weighed against emotion, patience versus risk. The decision crystallized when one alien slowed down to inspect a tree bark marked with claw-like scratches. He muttered something mocking about primitive human tools and tapped the mark with disdain. The survivor's jaw tightened. These creatures treated Earth like a trophy hall, decor for their amusement. The thought ignited a slow, steady fire inside them. Not a blaze of uncontrolled fury, but a controlled flame that sharpened focus. They shifted position again, easing down the tree trunk like a shadow sliding across stone. Below, the aliens still felt untouchable. One joked loudly about how humans always ran, how they screamed, how they begged. Another reminisced about the first time he watched a family taken apart for sport. Their voices oozed smug delight. But one alien, a younger one, smaller and less loud, glanced around uneasily as though sensing a change in the air. Though he said nothing, his fingers tightened on his weapon. Even among monsters, instincts sometimes whispered warnings. The survivor waited until the squad's formation stretched unevenly, a careless gap opening between the first three and the last two. Timing governed survival. Hesitation meant death. Moving with deliberate silence, the survivor stepped forward from behind a cluster of roots, their presence concealed until a final moment. A tossed stone clicked softly against a metal plate on one alien's armor. He turned sharply, but not fast enough. The forest snapped awake. The rusted snare rope surged upward, yanking the alien off his feet and hoisting him violently into the canopy. His startled cry was swallowed by the leaves. The others spun around in shock, weapons raised, scanning wildly in every direction. None of them saw the survivor melt back into the underbrush. The trap had been quick, brutal, and perfectly timed. A chilling hush fell over the group. Laughter vanished. Arrogance faltered. The forest, once their playground, suddenly felt predatory. Something unseen hunted them now, something they had belittled as prey. And as they stared upward into foliage where their squad mate had vanished, a heavy realization rippled through their ranks, one that marked the beginning of their unraveling, and the first true turning point of the hunt they thought they controlled. Panic spread to the alien squad like a toxin, quick and debilitating, twisting their once proud posture into something tense and uncertain. The survivor watched from a concealed position near the ravine's rim, studying every jittery movement, every whispered command, every trembling breath. The forest had finally become what it needed to be, a place where fear hunted its tormentors. Yet the survivor did not allow themselves the comfort of satisfaction. What came next required focus sharper than any blade. The alien suspended above the branches struggled weakly, armor scraping bark, but no one dared approach him. Their scanners, renowned for precision, flickered with conflicting readings. It confused them, and confusion bred fear. The smallest alien, the one who had shown unease earlier, knelt to adjust the device strapped to his wrist. His fingers shook as he tapped its interface. The more dominant hunters barked orders, demanding clarity, but he could only stammer about shadows, temperature drops, and sensor interference. For the first time, their confidence cracked wide enough for the survivor to see the vulnerability beneath the armor. That vulnerability mattered. It was leverage. The survivor slipped through the underbrush until they crouched behind a fallen log, listening intently. They studied the aliens' voices, noting who commanded, who hesitated, who looked over their shoulder more than ahead. Understanding your enemy was not merely a tactic. It was survival's foundation. The survivor's breathing steadied as memories surfaced. Their father had once told them that fear could topple giants if you learn when to push. Their mother had taught them to move silently through the woods long before invaders darkened the sky. That life felt like a story told long ago, but its lessons still pulsed through their veins. The squad regrouped shakily, half-heartedly pretending the situation was under control. One alien took charge, larger than the rest, with armor etched in jagged insignias. He raised his weapon toward the canopy, issuing commands in a harsh growl. His voice betrayed irritation, not fear. He still believed dominance could restore order. The survivor recognized the type, a leader who relied on intimidation rather than courage. Such leaders had predictable weaknesses. Push them hard enough, and they made rash decisions. Branches rustled overhead, drawing the alien's attention upward. The trapped alien hung unmoving now, the silence around him more alarming than any scream. The squad raised their rifles nervously, forming a defensive circle. Weapons hummed with rising energy, charging for a coordinated blast. But before they fired, another sound rippled through the forest, a low, resonant groan of shifting wood. The alien spun around just in time to see a rope cut cleanly through by a sharpened blade. Another body dropped from above, not from a trap, but from the silent hand of the survivor. This alien hit the ground hard, armor clattering, his weapon rolling away into the brush. Shock paralyzed the squad. The survivor withdrew again, melting into the trees before anyone could react. The realization hit the aliens with chilling clarity. The forest was not killing them. Someone was, and that someone knew exactly how to break them. Fear deepened into something rawer, dread. They no longer spoke arrogantly. Their voices dipped into fragmented whispers. They huddled closer, backs nearly touching. The leader barked at them again, but no one echoed his confidence. Even he looked over his shoulder now. From a vantage point behind knotted roots, the survivor observed the deterioration with a quiet, hardened focus. They remembered standing helpless as neighbors, friends, and strangers were dragged away during the first raids. They remembered the sound of their brother shouting for them to run, while the sky, cracked with fire, that helplessness had once been suffocating. Now, it sharpened their resolve. These killers would not leave this forest to hurt anyone else. The survivor shifted again, moving closer to the ravine. Footsteps approached, two aliens breaking from the group to investigate the earlier trap. They moved cautiously, weapons raised, scanning every inch of their surroundings. Their earlier arrogance was gone. The survivor picked up a smooth stone, weighing it briefly before flicking it down the ravine. It clattered loudly, echoing off the stone walls. The alien swung toward the sound instantly. The survivor seized the opportunity. A swift jab of the spear struck the first alien to the gap under his arm, where armor was weakest. The second alien fired instinctively, the blast sizzling past the survivor's shoulder and scorching bark. The survivor pivoted, driving the wounded alien into the second one, knocking him off balance. The ravine's edge crumbled beneath them, and both aliens tumbled down, their panicked cries swallowed by the depth below. The survivor remained crouched, breath steady, listening until the forest settled again. Only 3 aliens remained now. They regrouped several meters away, visibly shaken. The leader tried to mask his fear with aggression, smashing his fist against a tree trunk and shouting in their guttural language. But fear clung to him, too. The survivor noted every tremor in his movements, every hesitant glance into the shadows. Fear made beings careless, and carelessness led to mistakes. A light breeze shifted the treetops, and shafts of pale sunlight briefly pierced the canopy. In that fleeting illumination, the survivor saw their reflection in the alien's eyes, not a victim, not prey, not someone waiting to be hunted. They saw the transformation that loss had forged. A protector shaped by necessity, a shadow who struck with precision, a human spirit that refused to die quietly. But the moment of clarity passed quickly, replaced by the weight of reality. There were still enemies to face, and danger waited with every misstep. The survivor scanned the forest, preparing for the next phase of the hunt, knowing the remaining aliens would grow desperate and unpredictable. And as tension gathered like a storm about to break, the survivor sensed movement deeper in the forest, something larger, heavier, approaching with purpose. Reinforcements. The balance of power was about to shift again, and the survivor tightened their grip on their weapon, bracing for the escalation they knew was inevitable. The distant tremor in the earth grew heavier, more rhythmic, and unmistakably coordinated, a sign that the forest was no longer holding just 3 desperate aliens and a lone human. Reinforcements pressed in with mechanical precision, their metallic footfalls vibrating through the roots and stones beneath the survivor's feet. The forest canopy shivered at the disturbance, scattering loose leaves that drifted like dying embers. The survivor inhaled slowly, letting the cool air settle their thoughts. Fear crept at the edges of their mind, but fear was an old companion, one they had learned to tame rather than surrender to. They shifted into position, muscles coiled with intent, understanding that the next minutes would determine whether their defiance ended here, or became the whispered spark that ignited resistance far beyond this ravine. The 3 remaining aliens formed a loose line, glancing repeatedly toward the direction of the approaching reinforcements. Their leader's expression twisted with an uneven mix of relief and embarrassment. He wanted the newcomer to see him victorious, not trembling in a forest he had once mocked. His subordinates stood rigidly, anxious eyes scanning the brush. They no longer believed they controlled this ground. Their confidence had been stripped away like bark peeled from a tree, revealing the raw, vulnerable flesh underneath. The survivor recognized their uncertainty and used it, sinking deeper into the shifting shadows as a reinforcement squad emerged through a corridor of splintered trees. The newcomers were larger, equipped with reinforced armor glowing faintly with pulsating stripes of alien technology. Their weapons hummed at a pitch that vibrated the air around them. One scanned the area with a triangular device that emitted faint pulses of blue light when it passed over the bodies of their fallen comrades. Some suspended, some broken, some simply gone. The squad's pace faltered. Even technologically superior warriors felt the gravity of loss. The forest showcased their casualties like accusations carved in the open. The lead reinforcement growled something guttural, demanding an explanation from the three survivors. Their stumbling, fragmented report only heightened the newcomer's agitation. The survivor used a distraction to slip behind a thick stand of trees. They studied the terrain in a heartbeat, mapping possible escape routes, ambush positions, and fallback points. The ravine offered potential, but only with flawless timing. The forest floor had become a pressure point ready to explode under the right manipulation. They crouched low, fingers brushing the hilt of their blade, knowing a direct confrontation would be suicide. Instead, they relied on the same tools that had carried them through every impossible hour since the invasion: patience, strategy, and an unwavering refusal to give up. A sharp command from the reinforcement leader snapped through the clearing. The aliens fanned out, forming a semicircle that pushed inexorably toward the ravine where the survivor hid. Their formation was tight, disciplined, and far more dangerous than the earlier squad. Each step brought them closer, shrinking the survivors' options. The three shaken aliens followed hesitantly at the rear, looking over their shoulders as though expecting the forest itself to lunge at them. In a sense, that fear was justified. The survivor took a silent step back, heel brushing against a trip line they had prepared weeks earlier. They had meant to use it for hunting animals, but now it would serve a different purpose. With a careful tug, they armed the device and moved again before any alien sensors could register sudden motion. They watched the group advance, eyes narrowing as the reinforcement leader stepped closer to the ravine's edge. The survivors steadied their breathing, counting each footstep until the leader's weight landed precisely where it needed to. Branches above snapped with a sudden force as the counterweight released. A cluster of sharpened stakes swung downward from the overhead canopy, propelled by gravity and weeks of tension. The reinforcement leader jerked back, roaring a warning, but the stake struck his shoulder and leg, slicing through metal and flesh with sickening precision. He staggered, dropping to one knee. The squad erupted in frantic movement, weapons charging, scanning wildly. The forest answered with another crash as a second trap activated, a boulder rolling from a hidden incline and slamming into two of the soldiers, sending them tumbling toward the ravine. The surviving aliens fired blindly into the trees, scorching bark and filling the clearing with acrid smoke. The survivors sprinted along the ravine's rim, using the chaos as cover. Their breath came in controlled bursts, their mind a steady drumbeat of instinct and memory. They had to break the formation before the aliens regained control of the terrain. With a sharp twist, they hurled a stone into the brush opposite their movement. Alien scanners immediately locked onto the false motion, firing a volley that ignited the undergrowth. A searing heat wave rolled through the forest as flames spread across dry leaves. Smoke billowed, thick and disorienting, becoming both danger and shield. The survivor dug behind a fallen trunk, heart pounding, the firelight casting an infernal glow across the battlefield. The aliens stumbled, coughing and shouting as their visibility vanished. The survivors seized a moment, sliding down the ravine's incline and striking the reinforcement leader again, this time with a precise blow to the throat. The creature collapsed, weapon clattering from his grip. The remaining aliens gathered at the ravine's edge, either unwilling or unable to descend into smoke-filled depths. The fire raged behind them, pressing them forward in desperation. The survivor climbed a narrow ledge, making their way toward a crevice where a final trap waited. Their mind flicked back to their family. Their brother's final shout, their mother's guiding hand, their father's lessons whispered under starlight. Those memories fueled their final push. As the aliens advanced down the slope, they triggered the last mechanism. A concealed line snapped free, releasing a cascade of rocks that thundered down with unstoppable momentum. The aliens scrambled, but chaos had sealed their fate. Dust and debris swallowed them in a cloud of violent collapse. When silence returned, the survivors stood alone amid the settling haze. Their body trembled with exhaustion, but their spirit burned unbroken. They surveyed the ravine, knowing the danger had passed for now. Yet victory felt fragile, like smoke that slipped through fingers. The forest still held the weight of loss and the promise of battles yet to come. The survivor turned toward the fading horizon, walking with steady steps, driven by a hope they refused to let die.